Yep, we talk life, what makes it rich and worthwhile, the things that matter most, and the challenges we all face. All to answer one question: what makes life worthy? I'm your host, Amaris Gonzalez, and welcome to LifeWorthee, the podcast. Hey LifeWorthee fam, welcome to another episode of LifeWorthee, the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today for this next episode. It was a really great and really real conversation, so I'm really excited to jump right in. Today's guest is Ron Waddell. He is a certified transformational life coach through the Association for Christian Character Development, an accredited gang specialist through the National Gang Crime and Research Center, and a certified youth mental health specialist. He's a recovery coach and holds a nonprofit management and leadership certificate from Boston University. He has completed and co-facilitated multiple reentry groups inside the Massachusetts House of Corrections. He recently completed the Black Addiction Counselor Education Program through BSAS and is a candidate for his LADC 1. He presents at local, state, and national events and speaks passionately and eloquently about issues affecting marginalized communities, specifically young men of color. He is the founder of Legendary Legacies Incorporated, a nonprofit organization with a mission to equip young men ages 17 to 24 with the tools to identify their purpose and live their passion for the betterment of their community. Legendary Legacies focuses on working with individuals that local police have identified as proven risk or impact players. Join me in this conversation with Ron. Let's get into it. Hey fam, Amaris here with another episode of LifeWorthee, the podcast, and I am so excited to host our special guest, Ron Waddell. And as you know, on the podcast, we talk about what makes life worthy, those little things that make life worth living. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron, and he can introduce himself and tell us a little bit about his story.
Wow. Thank you for being on LifeWorthee. So first, before I'm proud of you to LifeWorthee is here. I know it's your thing, be professional, but when you were just talking about it, now you got the whole thing popping. So
I know. I'm excited. I'm glad you've always been so supportive. It was a concept, it was an idea, and I'm just excited to get folks' story out. And I think you have a really compelling story. I think you do a lot of great work. And so I'm excited to share that with everybody. And I appreciate you being on the platform.
Nah, man, this is fire. I'm excited. So about me, I don't know. It's always weird to talk about yourself.
Yeah.
I think, or better yet, once I get going, I'm good. It's just where to come into the story.
Right. Do you need a Issa Rae moment where you're in the mirror?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I just gotta
get yourself started.
Have that conversation. That's facts. That's funny. I am balding. That's for sure. And that's because I'm a father of two boys. I got son Joshua, who's 11, and Isaiah, who's 10. I really, most of what I do is for them. Mm-hmm. I love them. I would chill with them too, if they weren't my kids. I know that'd be weird because I'm an adult, but they're dope people.
Right. No, but that's good.
You know what I mean?
Because when they're older and they're coming around, when they're living their lives, you're like, Dad, let's hang out.
I would kick it.
Right.
I would kick it with them too. They good people. Whether they was my sons or not. And it's fascinating to be a father. I think I love that the most out of everything I do. The level of influence that you can have on a life at that level is profound when I really think about it.
Yeah, I can agree with that. So, your actions, your words, all the things are really impactful. They're watching and listening.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything. He and I just had a moment the other day because we have really open conversations, which is different than when I was growing up. I love my mom, mm-hmm. but it was more be seen, not heard. Mm. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
yeah, I hear you.
If it was, go to your room, there's no why.
Yeah, there's no explanation.
No, yeah.
And if you questioned it, that's it.
Right.
Don't question that.
Yeah, that might be the last time you breathe. So my son's I allow that. So be go to we had a thing the other day because I promised him that I was going to do something, and then I didn't do it. And he was saying to me, well, here's the thing, Dad, I'm not sure I can trust you because you had made this promise.
Heavy.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, there's the initial reaction for me as a parent to want to revert back to what happened to me when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. And be like, hey, watch your mouth. Who you talk to? Right? But it ignores his experience if I was to do that.
Yeah. And
really is an opportunity for me to explore why am I so defensive? Right? Mm-hmm. And what was really profound in it, it was underneath it, there was sadness because I did not deliver on what I said. Right. And was being called to account by this individual who wouldn't be alive without me. Right? Mm-hmm. So you owe me. Right? And that's just the foolishness like in my head around all that. Yeah. But his ability to open up that conversation for me to say that I was sad about that, and then recognize for me that the willingness to explore that hurt, that sadness, actually is a net positive, because it was so uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. I don't want to feel that. Right.
How does it feel to lead into discomfort as a parent with this level of communication? Like how does that
It's
enrich?
a mess. You never know if you're going to get it right. You don't know. You don't know. I don't know when. Right. Is it too far? Did I let them ask too much? Like, right. And at some point I do. They realize like mm-hmm. you're pulling the.
You're on the line. You're walking the line right there.
That and they'll know when I'm pulling I'm all right, I'm your dad card. Like it's over. Like we're not doing the conversation anymore. Right. Right. Like, right. Because I appreciate you sharing that. Mm-hmm. Appreciate having that conversation, and I've provided all the reasons why, mm-hmm. and we're done. Right. So the willingness to choose to do that. How does it feel to do that? Yeah. It is. Like I said, you don't know how it's going to go. So it's like jumping out of a plane with a parachute. I don't know what this is going to be like. Mm-hmm. But I think most of life is like that. And when you try to orchestrate everything, then it'll paralyze you from moving. It's a matter of saying, what am I committed to once I make the jump? Once I open the dialogue, what am I committed to? I'm committed to connection. I'm committed to caring. I'm committed to values. I'm committed to understanding. And so as long as I feel I've accomplished those and I structure the conversation in a way where I allow for those things to happen, then I can feel accomplished in even being in the discomfort. Yeah. But it's uncomfortable. It's a scary feeling. Mm-hmm. And I think that I've never jumped out of a plane.
Me neither.
Yet.
It's on the bucket list.
Yeah. We gotta try it, right?
Well, good luck.
Right?
No. But I'm sure it'll be very invigorating when you do it.
Yeah, it'll I imagine it'll be a hurdle I overcome. Yeah. I don't see myself doing it over and over and over again. Yeah. Like some people, but yeah, I'll try it. Yeah. But I think once I've chosen to do that, it also, earlier we talked, everything they see, it's a model mm-hmm. for what I would want them to do. Right? Like mm-hmm. that old phrase, was it don't do as you say, not as you do. Just do
as I say, not as I do.
Yeah. That doesn't work.
It never does.
And so I'm watching what you do, because that is speaking also. Right. That speaks more. So for me, it provides a great model, and it also provides ammunition for when they don't do it with each other or someone else.
Fair enough.
Right? Like, wait a second. Didn't we talk through, these types of things? Right. So that's not what you asked me, though. You asked me about my story.
It's part of your story.
How did I get to being a father, and why is it really important to me? Mm-hmm. I didn't have my father in my life growing up. Okay. He was someone who he was smoking crack and he was in and out of jail, and it was a really challenging experience to go through that. But I remember like being young, like I used to think it was cultural, and maybe it is cultural, but I was really good. I don't know what they call it now.
Okay.
I think they call it roasting. Flaming? Roasting? Oh, you roasted them. Right?
Yeah, I think all those words apply.
Is it? Whatever?
Yeah.
In Philly, when I was growing up, we call it capping or busting. Like, yo, you busting on dude.
Okay, yeah.
So, part of growing up as a very skinny, like you can see my ribs. Not that I wasn't healthy, I was just a very skinny kid. And without a father and on welfare, it was a survival mechanism, but yo, I would fire anybody up. Like, yo, nobody, like for real. Like, and I always had a quick wit. And so like, when we got into, arguments or whatever, like, man, I could make fun of anyone at the best. Yeah, I was good.
Well, I mean, your humor definitely shines through, so you can make light of anything.
Yeah, and so, but some of it was mean. Like, it was mean. It was mean-spirited.
I think, though, sometimes kids can be a little mean.
Oh,
they don't see all the time. So when you're younger,
I was mean-spirited, and it was out of a place of trying to protect vulnerability. And so even when you say, what does it mean to step in discomfort, to be vulnerable in that way, it makes me think of all those things and the experiences I've had to go through to be able to grow, to be able to do that in this place, because that was not something that I would do when I was younger. It wasn't modeled. I didn't see it. And I felt ostracized. I felt like it didn't belong. And the other piece with it is I was intelligent, and I got put into some of these gifted classes. And at the time for me, like I don't even know, but it wasn't cool to be smart.
That was definitely a thing, right? Like, it definitely wasn't cool to be smart.
Yeah.
But it also wasn't cool to not be smart enough.
Yeah, and so like part of it is like I needed to be funny, and I needed to be like I don't think I'm a nerd.
Right. Like I'm somewhere in between here.
Yeah.
And I can rock with y'all.
But I looked like a nerd. Like and Steve Urkel was the worst thing that could have happened to me because I was skinny and I had welfare glasses. And the welfare glasses, anyone ever had welfare glasses? Like back in the day, welfare glasses was crazy because I remember we went to the store, me, my sister, and we're like, all right, bet we gotta get glasses. Yeah. And so like you go to the eyeglass store, they got all the glasses on the wall, right? So I'm like, ooh, like I like these over here, da 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 da. And like the person who helps, whatever, they're like, no, like yours is over here. They're like, they go to this drawer and they pull out this drawer. It's like, get the dust off these joints and like the
thick lens and
they was like adult size.
But glasses. I swear everybody had those glasses. Back in the day. Johns.
Me and my sister came up with a name for them. We called them glunkamonks.
Glunkamonks.
Yo, you got them glunks, bro. This dude's wearing glunks.
I feel like that's appropriate for
like
how they look.
they were clunky in glasses, and so they were glunks. So I had those. I was very skinny, and we shopped at. So that our name for the Goodwill, so that we wouldn't get caught saying Goodwill, was Jawaz. Y'all never had, like my
Jawaz.
Yeah, so we'd be like, I say Tarjay.
Yeah.
So my aunt said, they'd be like, yo, we going to Jawaz, but Jawaz was Goodwill.
You had to mess it. You had to do it. Like y'all don't know nothing about Jawaz.
So Jawaz is where we would go, and so my gear was like that, and I don't think people knew, but I internalized that this external representation of me, which is very normal for kids. Yeah. My son's going through it. Was an indication of my value and who I was, and so I was very, very protective of that. Hence why, I was very, very sharp at making fun of someone if they came at me the wrong way in any kind of way. Right,
because then who's going to try you? Especially if they can't come back quick enough.
Just leave it alone.
Right.
Just leave it alone. Just leave him alone.
Right.
Except for the big guy. And so I've always been good at creating networks around me. I didn't think about that then, but my friend Duran, shout out Duran, that was my dude. He still is my guy. But Duran used to get me out of a lot of trouble because I had a really smart mouth, but I couldn't fight and I was bad skinny. And so Duran would always just be around. And they'd be like, bro, that's Duran's boy. Don't mess with him. You know what I mean? So
that worked out. Was he ever the type to be like, chill, Ron, chill?
Nah.
He let you go off.
Nah, he was just like, yo, that's my man. It's like, yeah, he was just like, yo, yeah.
All right.
He was just like, that's my man. Could be because we was like two of the only black people in that school. I grew up in like suburban America, like white picket fence. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm an urban transplant much later in life.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
But like I had a very interesting experience because my extended family lived in a heavily urban district.
Okay.
And so like I was in between like Chester, PA, shout out Chester and my cousin Chris, all of them still out there. That was like don't, I remember it would be like, yo, you go see my aunts over there. It was like, don't be outside after 7:30. If it get dark, like
come
you get
inside.
shot. Yeah, bro, we're not doing that. Like
right.
don't be out here. If they don't know you. And it was like, yo, the east side, south, there was all this kind of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
Where I was at, that wasn't a thing.
Right.
And so like I was kind of navigating these two spaces. I remember I used to be terrified to have to go walk to the barber shop down the street from my grandmother's house to get my hair cut. And that's where we had to go to get my hair cut. Because there was no haircutting spot for me.
Where you live.
At least my mom knew. Like we would go across the bridge. We would go to Chester, find my man to cut my hair, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
what was it like navigating those two spaces that it sounds like that were very integral to your identity, right?
Yeah.
And then having to show up differently in both. Or did you not show up differently in both?
Nah, you better stop playing. You better switch up, man. You can't be out here.
I'm just asking.
Nah.
I mean, that's what I thought.
Nah.
So you have to present differently.
My mom was crazy too. No, she loved us. That's what I mean. But she what was wild was like I remember, and it's probably because it was most affordable. Mm-hmm. Like she enrolled us in the city camp.
Okay.
So we lived in Jersey, and in Chester, like they had their own community camps for their kids that grew up in Chester. Okay. Right? Mm-hmm. And so mom signed us up. And so we had to go to day camp with Chester. And so that wasn't the population, that wasn't demographic, that wasn't the kids we grew up with. Right. You know what I'm saying? So their experiences was totally different. As a matter of fact, I remember being in there and they was like, yo, is you from the east side or west side? I was like, nah, I'm from Middletown, bro. They was like, what? Like, what is that? You know what I'm saying? Like, ain't no middle. This dude's a clown. Like, you know what I'm saying?
They're like, no, I gave you options, east or west.
Yeah, that's not a thing. Bro, what you talking? But man. It was definitely a way to move different. And I didn't flame as many people with it because I was like, all right, that might go different. That might go down different. You gotta watch yourself a little bit. Yeah, I was a little bit more quieter. I was a little bit more observant over there when I was on that side because I wanted to see how to navigate, how to move in that space. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so to your point, what was it like? It was at the time it was natural. And I remember like one of the first times at some point sociology class. When did you understand social classes? It was like, wow. Like, it was that early that I recognized the difference in how we operate in these two different areas. You know what I mean? Like,
and mostly probably because you had to, right? It's one thing to just kind of be raised in an environment and then later in life as an adult be like, oh, there are differences. But you had to move from different environments.
Yeah. Often. And we had, I had 11 aunts and uncles.
That must have been fun.
It was dope. Mm-hmm. It was dope for sure. Mad cousins. So I never had friends because all my friends was my cousins. Like I don't even know how many cousins. Like it's crazy. It got to be over 50, 60 cousins. Like,
yeah, that feels familiar. Like once everybody gets together, like who do you need to invite to the birthday party? To the barbecue?
We're not.
That's it. We're not doing that.
No. I don't have time to chill with them. It was always just like, oh, you with your cousins, like right. And my cousins lived around the corner, and then like, yeah, you know what I mean. And then we had our older cousins, and so I never. That's what we chilled with. all the time. And so there were multiple different demographics even in that. Like my Uncle Larry, like he lived out North Pennsylvania, drove Benzes and all that. And then, we had other aunts that were on a different end of the spectrum that were still in the city, rented apartments. And, it was just like, all right, that was my mom's sisters and brothers. And so it was like, oh, some people own houses, some people live in apartments, some people are struggling with this. And so it was just kind of cross-section
across the board
of everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Fascinating stuff. And then to go back and realize like where they came from, like ancestry stuff. I wish I did more of that.
Yeah.
I'd probably look into that more.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
That would probably give you more insight into to the foundation of your family unit.
It's funny. You want to talk about leaning into uncomfortability. I don't want to do that.
No.
Yeah.
What are you afraid that you'll discover?
I don't know. I feel like potentially there's some enslaved folks. I feel like we'll get to some point that it. Honestly, what's wild? I feel like this is what I made up in my head. Like there's some dope dude or a woman, and I'm not living up to the standard. That's what I've made up in my head. That and that will find a dead end of enslaved people and it just drops off. And then the other fear is like there's somebody great and I'm not living up to that standard.
You don't think so?
No. This is what I made up in my head.
Yeah, I was about to say that sounds like a very internal bar that you've set.
Yeah. It's something in there, right? Like what is it? So
like what if this person was X, Y, and Z?
Yeah.
How do I honor my ancestors?
Yeah.
Or, like you said, reaching a dead end, and then there's this question mark about my history, my lineage.
Yeah, I started doing it at one point. I was on one of them joints, and then
I did one of those.
And you did the swab?
Yeah.
What?
I did it.
Nah, you didn't. They got you.
I know, but I wanted to know so bad. I wanted to know so bad.
My boys is hacking that right now.
Hopefully, I'm not that important, and they just,
Well, my whole thing was like, what if someone hacks their thing and they get your DNA?
Right. And that's something I thought about after.
What did you learn?
I learned that, I learned about my ancestry regionally. So I am about 44% Southern European, so that's probably Portugal, Spain, about 35% West African, 18% Mesoamerican, so that's probably the Caribbean islands. And then there are small percentages of other things that I can't quite remember.
Okay.
But it was pretty cool.
Were you surprised at all?
Not really. Yeah. I would say so. My family's Puerto Rican in terms of ethnicity, and it's like kind of a mixed bag. I think I've heard stories from my great aunts and great grandmothers about having their grandparents being from Spain, having cousins and stuff who are from the island, and so on. So I do know that there was a mixed lineage, and I'm very excited about that. I think for me, I feel like, I have all these pieces of culture that are a part of me, and it's exciting that it's across the region. But there is some there's some pieces of sadness, because we know about transatlantic slave trade, and of course I'm not going to sit here and pretend that some of my ancestors from Spain were coming here with good intentions.
You don't think so?
Yeah, right. But
ain't that where the Santa Maria and all them came from?
I think so.
He came because he borrowed Spain's boats.
Yeah, he did, and then he came to the island and he wasn't very nice. Nah. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
But
that's fine. It's interesting you say it too, because I think about that when you say that now, because my last name is Waddell. Mm-hmm. Waddell is Welsh.
It's Welsh.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So at some point, maybe someone raped somebody, or I don't know, a slave. You know what I'm saying? So how do we end up with the last name Waddell? That's not. No. It snuck its way in there. That didn't belong to us.
That didn't belong to us.
No. So that's another thing too.
But it all belongs to us. You gotta own it a little bit.
It opened some doors for me, I think.
Yeah?
Yeah, for
In what
sure.
ways? In what ways?
I think this is crazy, but it's the truth.
Okay.
I think when you read my name, you can't tell my ethnicity. Ronald B. Waddell Jr.
So on paper, you get callbacks no matter what job you apply to.
And then when I talk on the phone, then I show up. They're like, got us again.
Damn it.
No. But it's I thought about that, honestly, when I was naming my children.
Yeah.
I really did.
You know what's interesting? So it's funny. When I got my first job in management, I remember feeling so much pride about my name.
Respect it.
Being with a management title and it being Gonzalez.
I'm jealous.
I really felt good about that.
Word.
And I think later in life, you learn about all these things and biases that happen in the hiring process, and I'm like, I don't know if I did that on my own. Like, you start questioning, did I do that on my own, or did my network help me get there? If they did, that's fine.
Right.
But I had so much pride in my name, Gonzalez.
Word.
But if someone else would see that, they'd be like, would they write it off? Would they look at this? I have a great resume. I'm not gonna lie. All right.
Agreed.
And would they look at all the work that I've done and say, meh?
Right.
And it made me. That was after just learning more about biases, it made me question it. And I'm like, no, I'm going back to the part where I felt prideful. Yeah. We're not gonna do that. But it is an interesting thing to think about.
I definitely thought about that when we were naming the boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read a lot of reports. I probably read a scholarly report a week. Okay. And it can be on various things. I love input. I just love to get information.
Yeah, that's a level of commitment I wish I had. I could have it, but yeah. But no, it's good to learn. It's good to.
So we were just talking earlier about the personality profile, the Clifton strengths. Mm-hmm. So I've come to find out that it's I've always done this. Yeah. And it's one of my strengths. It's a top 5 strength. It's called input. I just love to get information on anything, and at some point I may need it. Right. So where all this came from, I read some report somewhere. Okay. About the biases around looking at names and how often they were chosen or not. And so I made a calculated decision to name my sons, I think, would be culturally neutral names.
Interesting. Do you feel good about that? Do you feel like...
I feel like thinking futuristically, it was the best option for me in thinking about what's best for them. Okay. Now, at 18, they can change their names. They can do whatever they want.
Right, of course. Right? Of course.
But as a parent, I feel like I have a responsibility. Some may say, wow, bro, you sold out. Open to that opinion as well. Mm-hmm. But I also think they're dope names. And so, in thinking about what's best for them as they matriculate and go through this world, me and their mom felt that this was the best decision. And to your point, is it? I don't know. Right?
I think as a parent, it's really just it's a gamble every time with the best intention. Yeah. Right. So, yeah, maybe it's a great decision.
I was talking to them the other day, and I forget what came up, but I was like, I've never done this before. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I've never been the father of an 11-year-old before. I don't have any. Yeah, I don't have any experience with this, bro. Right. And they're like, why would you say that? Because it's true. It's true. It's true. I'm learning it right now.
Yeah, and you only have 12 months to figure it out until he's 12.
Yeah. So yeah, man. I think even going back to the earlier part of our conversation and stepping into the vulnerability, I think that's what into the uncomfort. I think that's what being a good parent is. That's what being a perfect parent is that I'm going to screw up. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to own it, though. And that is the type of person that I would want to raise. Not someone that looks to point the finger or scapegoat or anything like that.
Right.
Everything's not your fault, but you have responsibility.
Absolutely.
And so let's find the nickel that you own and the dime, because that's the only place that you have any power. And if you can figure out that piece, then you have the potential and opportunity to shift and change your trajectory in your environment. As long as you're continuing to look externally and say, oh, it's because of this, or it's because of that, or this, to me, you've given your power away.
What a great way to view self-accountability. Ron touched on tapping into vulnerability and discomfort as methods of growth, really placing onus on the individual rather than external circumstances to dictate his own experiences. In thinking about this more, I wanted to share this quote. When you start to take responsibility for the results you get in life, you also take back the power to change your future outcome. How have you impacted the outcomes in your life? Share with us. Tag us at LifeWorthee on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, and share your thoughts. Thank you for this podcast moment. Back to the show.
Right. That's actually very powerful. I've never thought about it that way. I feel like I've thought about accountability, but I've never broken it down in that way. And I think that's a really great way to think about it, in terms of giving your power away. Because I think I've heard lectures about, to me, and maybe I've spoken to others about why accountability is so important. But what you've just said just kind of provides a, what am I trying to say?
Framework?
Not framework, but what does this do for me? And not that you should be selfish about it, but it's like, oh, I'm giving my power away by not being accountable. And I think understanding how this affects you is a good way to view it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've ever thought about accountability in that way. I'm always thinking externally. How does me taking accountability affect others? How does it affect my environment? How does it affect my son? But I think when you think about it, and in that sense, it's also like giving you some ground to stand on too. And you show up differently when you think about that, right? There's like more confidence in being accountable, maybe even being vulnerable. Yeah. I don't know if you agree, but this is my thought.
Well, to me, it's a matter of if I'm getting something in life that I don't want, and it's my life, then I've got to look at what I'm contributing to what I'm getting. Yeah. Like, I'm there. I'm part of it. If I'm in a relationship and it's not the way I want it, guess what? I'm not outside the relationship. I'm in it. Right. And so there's something that I'm contributing to it to make it this way. Right. And so to me, that's the power. That's the power. Like, all right, what am I contributing to this that's creating this outcome? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. That's really interesting. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. So I know we've talked about you as a parent, and it sounds like owning vulnerability and accountability has really shaped who you are.
Yeah, wasn't always that way.
Wasn't always that way.
No.
So when did that start taking root in your life? When did that shift occur?
When I got divorced.
When you got divorced? Yeah. Okay, tell me about it, if you're comfortable.
The divorce, the whole thing?
In context of the conversation.
No, the divorce forced me beyond the mask. It was so painful that the mask of pretending everything was okay, I couldn't uphold it anymore. Yeah. And so it required a decision of what are you going to do? Do we stay stuck here and revert? Because at the time I was having a very difficult time with drinking. I was drinking way too much. I was smoking a lot of weed, and the reality was that it was not helpful to the relationship. struggling with porn addiction, and even when the divorce happened, like there's this initial, well, what you did to me, right? Like,
right,
because she wrote the letter initially.
Defensiveness.
Yeah. She wrote the letter. I don't want to do this anymore. And again, the depth of that was so heavy that the decision to choose to go to therapy at that point was the survival mechanism. I had gone to emergency mental health on my own volition at least 2 times, and then I was escorted there by police 2 times because I was very unstable, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I hadn't dealt with any of the trauma and brokenness in the little boy from the time I was a kid.
Yeah.
That I was still defending with the way I was snapping on people.
Right.
Right. Like we never revisited to see where he was at and how he was doing. And so the mask of pretending like all these things was cool for, at that point, 37 years, couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. And so in that sense, during the marriage, was it like these reactions that you were having? Was the response like, but this is fine because this is just how?
Well, part of it, this is justification.
Okay.
For me in that way, and a lot of folks will do it because there's a vision that we have, and then there's where we are, right? And we talk about I'm going to be talking about this on Dr. Sherry McLean's youth, but the distance between our current reality and the vision are these decisions that we make, and there's tension in between these two, right?
Yeah.
And we avoid looking at both of these, and so I avoid thinking about what's possible, and I accept what's here. My friend Dan says something pretty profound. Dan Tacchini, smart guy. Most people find a level of despair that they can tolerate and call it happiness.
If that's not honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so in the marriage, it was like, oh, but it wasn't great. I wasn't a good husband, but at least I'm in the house. My dad was. I'm light years beyond what was happening for me.
Right.
Right. Like I provide, there's a house, and she worked as well. It wasn't like she didn't contribute. But like I'm here, I contribute as a father, I contribute financially to the household. But as far as relationship and connecting with her, it wasn't possible because I wasn't sure who I was. I had a very fractured identity, and in a lot of ways, the marriage was a place to hide those fractures. And so as long as I have you, then I feel whole. And so it wasn't marriage for the right reason. It wasn't marriage to cherish her, to uplift her.
Right.
It was to heal a wound, which it's not her responsibility, nor could she ever do.
Right. Could you have known that though? It almost, I feel like I've had conversations like this with friends, family members, in terms of relationships sometimes don't work out because especially if you don't know yourself first, but sometimes to get to that point, it's almost like you have to be reflective on the experiences that you've had. So like while you were in it, could you have known that, or did you know that you didn't know yourself and that's what you needed? Right. So, and for example, you mentioned that like there was this bar that you met. It was like, at least this wasn't like what I experienced, but did you know that it needed to be higher?
Oh yeah.
You know? Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I knew it wasn't healthy. I knew it. I knew I was lying a lot. I knew that I was hiding things a lot. Right. But the thing that's so interesting about this conversation is that when you don't take responsibility, you allow yourself to be a victim. That's different than being victimized.
Yes.
But so I'm not saying that, but I can, and when you don't take responsibility, you can always justify
your
if you don't
actions.
If you don't take responsibility, you have to create a villain.
Yeah.
You have to.
Yeah. There's always going to be something that is the reason why
you have to
created X, Y, and Z circumstances. Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And so the inability to accept that and own that for me was a pride issue. You know what I mean? There were multiple times she shared, like, when she would say you're prideful. I'm not, you know.
There it would. There's the pride.
Case in point. And a lot of it was like, hey, like, we need to go to therapy. We need to get help. Yeah, we do, but we never take the steps for it. Some of that was because I was scared to explore what was down there.
Yeah.
Right? What am I going to find?
Right.
And also, I had developed, just like a lot of the young brothers we work with within our organization, I've developed coping mechanisms that are my go-to. And so this is unknown. This is I know how to operate in this space. I know how to operate with a drink. I know how to operate with some smoking. I know how that operates. If we go over here and now I got to talk about feelings and I got to open all it. Yeah. Like this is unfamiliar territory. I don't know what this is. Right. I don't know where that's gonna go. So I'm gonna stay safe.
That's interesting. Good. And you said moving into discomfort happened after the divorce. That's when you were more open to moving into those spaces? Or, yeah. And so did you needed that push essentially?
Best thing that ever happened to me. It's probably the most courageous thing that someone's ever done.
Yeah.
Her.
Yeah.
Choosing to say what I think's best, right? Like, reflecting back now, it's like, I don't know if I would. I know I wouldn't have had the courage to do that.
Yeah.
Because of the reason I was in the relationship.
Right.
Was unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so a really, really courageous move for her to say, I'm gonna make this choice to go figure this out. As like, no one gets married to get divorced.
Right.
I don't think.
No. Yeah. No one
unless
has
you're a Kardashian. and then but like for her to make that decision, yeah, it was the most painful experience that I've had, even more than when my mom died when I was 15, because there were layers of scar tissue that I had put over all those other wounds and had numbed out to through various different exploits, whether it be drinking, smoking, girls, porn, whatever it was, right? And so at this point, none of those things could satisfy the pain. And so we needed to explore something different.
Right. You had to, or else
this isn't working.
Right.
This isn't enough anymore. And so I think part of God's plan for me, in how He sees everything from beginning to end, was like, all right, like I'm committed to Him being His best self, and there are some things that you got to go through to get there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was an interesting conversation. We with my therapist, we started out talking around the divorce, and then we got into personal history. I remember at one point it was so funny because she says to me, she's like, I'm telling some of my story like really in depth, and she's like looking, and she's like, so have you ever talked to anybody about this? And I'm like,
I'm talking to you.
I'm like, nah. Right, she's like, never. And I'm like, not really. And she's like, how old are you? I'm like 37, and she's looking like,
oh no.
Like, how are you? And she said something like, how are you here? Like, what do you?
Yeah.
And I'm like Jesus? I don't know.
Right.
And so, but exploring all that, there were some really cool things in there that I found. And as I've discovered more about who I am, it's made me be more at peace with that, and then have an understanding of how I operate in the world and interrupt even more negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, one of the core ones that we uncovered in there for me that I still get to that I still choose to interrupt is that you're not important. So one of the things that I learned in therapy, which was really, really cool, was like some theories talk about a core belief.
Mm-hmm.
Theories of psychology talk about a core belief. So there was a core belief that was developed early on from my father not being there. It was very, very interesting. It's like funny when you go. It's like to me, therapy, it's because it's like mining.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh,
like, you're right.
That's where that comes from.
It's always been there.
Yeah.
And it gets down to the roots of everything.
It's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
So there was this story I hadn't even remembered that she was able to extract. She used EMDR. You ever heard of that?
No.
Eye movement desensitization reprocessing is what it is. So it's essentially they can induce the same effects as REM sleep.
Okay.
And you can reassign an emotion to an experience that was recorded in your head a certain way.
That's interesting.
It was originally designed for people coming back from war with PTSD. That's initially what it was done for. But
that makes sense.
You can use a lot of different.
Yeah.
But anyway, we got into this conversation around. There was a rock that I painted when I was, I don't know, little, 4 or 5, I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And like he was like, I'm gonna come see it, and dude never came. And I internalized that as there's something more important than you. And it was fascinating because there's been like that. It was like, oh man, like I've kind of always kind of felt that. I didn't know. I couldn't articulate it as well as like she did, or in that moment as we pulled it out. But it was like, oh, okay. And so there's like the awareness of that.
Right.
Like it doesn't always go anywhere.
Right.
It's just that, oh.
I'm aware that this is a thing.
It's a thing. And so if it happens.
And it was always there, but you just couldn't probably pinpoint what that was.
Right.
And I think therapy is interesting because that like external observation is so helpful. It's almost like when you step back from a painting, you can see the whole thing, but when you're so close, you can just see meshes of color.
Right.
And I don't know if you found that similarly, that's like an experience you have in therapy where
I love that metaphor. I'd never heard it in that way, but I love that. Yeah.
Like someone is able to view from a further perspective, a further point.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really interesting. So tell me more about how like now you're at a point, you're tapping into your vulnerability. You're tapping into these experiences that have shaped you, and you're gaining this awareness.
Yeah.
How has that helped you become who you are today? Like, where has that led you, and how does that Ron Waddell become this Ron Waddell in 2024?
How?
Or if you can explain that experience, how has that shaped who you are today?
It's a different awareness of how I show up, and the willingness to explore that with trusted people, and allow them to speak into that. Like there's less fragility around those things. If you get something wrong and you don't get it right. I think that it also has placed me in a position of recognizing the beauty in it and wanting to share that with other folks.
Yeah.
Right? Like, particularly Black men, it's not a thing that we do in large percentages. But for me, the ability to explore those things, become more aware, have been really, really profound and powerful, in how I lead and how I parent. Right, like we got onto the conversation about even having these dialogues. When Josh was first born, I used to spank him like that, but then he hit me back when the first time
changes everything.
First time I spanked him, he hit me back.
Yeah,
he was like 4. Then he hit me back, and then I hit him harder, and then he hit me harder, and then I asked him like, "Why are you hitting me?" He was like, "Cause you hit me." I was like, "That makes a lot of sense."
Yeah, it does. Kids are simple.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, duh.
Right. But like for me, it was like I'm a parent. So in my parenting, in my my different roles at work, at some point maybe I'll be in a relationship again. I think it'll show up there. I think there's still some areas that I want to. Right now, I'm just focused on my kids and growing myself and preparing them to be successful. But in the future, maybe at some point, there's a relationship that romantically that I'll pursue, and it shows up there.
Yeah.
But actually, I will say it's shown up there in my dating. Like I've dated.
Yeah.
And it's pretty, like I'm clear on my values, and I'm clear on who I am. And so it's easier to be like, this is.
You're right. When you're unclear, when you're a little lost, it just kind of the flow.
Well,
there's nothing wrong with the flow, but there's like this uncertainty of if you're moving in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
Versus if you're like, no, I know who I am. I know what I would ideally want, and I can say I think this could go or this could.
Yeah. I'm not gonna try to force I can tell if we're forcing a round peg in a square hole at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, and I was doing that for a while, and everyone knows, like dating is wild right now.
Dating's wild.
Yeah. So I was like, all right, man, I'm putting a lot of energy in this, and I don't need to. So, but more around, I think mostly in my parenting and my leadership, openness, willingness to, even how like we've designed like the questions, like check-ins with supervisors, direct reports. All right, so what am I not doing well? Right? Like tell me what's not working.
Right. That's very supportive of you. It sounds like.
Well, I always think I'm crushing it. I'm not out here thinking I'm screwing it up. So unless right, like I don't go out. Can't wait to screw this thing up. Right. Can't wait to piss somebody off. Right. But so unless you let me know, and I think that ability, that willingness, going through that space. Oh, and then the transformational coaching work that I did with Take New Ground and the RevNet process was really, really profound stuff, man. To create those distinctions of like how we show up, how I perceive myself showing up, and how somebody else really sees you showing up. Right?
Yeah.
Because for me in that, it was a matter of like, I could think that I'm being caring, but unless you receive it that way, then what does it matter?
Right. So how did you get to a point where you can gauge that? What was it that you learned so that you can do that?
That I'm a fraud. Like no, like real talk. Like what I learned is like you don't see reality. Like you don't. We experience the world. That's why the therapy, right? There's a different vantage point that you are experiencing me, and if I'm open to receive that, there's tremendous power and insight in realizing how I show up.
Right.
And so recognizing that as much as I want to be authentic, it's being authentic in my inauthenticity.
Tell me more. Being authentic in your inauthenticity.
Right. So the reality of how I show up.
Listening. Knowing
that, all right, there are moments when I walk in here and it's like, I got to be the leader. And I've got to look like I've got it all together. All right. It's a freaking fraud. It's a show.
I get it.
It's a show, right? When I'm in some ways when I'm picking my clothes, I'm going to wear this today because it's going to make people think this about, right?
Right.
And so
it's going to make people comfortable.
No.
They're going to be able to.
And here's the thing: none of it's bad. It's just part of the human condition. Like it's real.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
so recognizing that there are tremendous opportunities where I walk in my authenticity, and then there's moments where I'm completely inauthentic, inauthentic, and if you really care about me and you're a friend, then I want you to speak into that.
Okay.
I value. There's a proverb that's really dope.
Mm-hmm.
It says that the wounds of a friend can be trusted, and so the second part of that is that an enemy multiplies kisses. Essentially, friends are people that tell you what you need to hear,
Right?
And it may be painful, hurtful in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but you can trust it.
Right.
Whereas an enemy will tell you everything that's great,
Yeah.
because they just want you to stay where you are. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, then I feel like you're an accomplice to my inauthenticity.
Yes. So, do you feel like you've surrounded yourself with a community of friends, coworkers, even folks within your network who speak to your authenticity, who can tell you these hard things?
Oh, they're the best, man. I love them. I love them, and I hate talking to them.
Well, that's good.
Because they're gonna push you on that. I had a conversation with a good friend the other day. I think as I get older too, the other day is like, it could be yesterday or even 3 years ago when I say the other day.
Mm-hmm.
So the other day was really like a couple months ago. But we had been meeting for a group, and then slowly I was like, you know what, man, I had stopped showing up. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So here's a perfect example of inauthenticity.
Okay.
Right? So we're meeting for this book that we're reading, and we're going to meet every Wednesday morning, and we go through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as we get through it, I'm late one morning. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next week, I'm late again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next week, I'm not going to make it. Can we reschedule? Right. Mm-hmm. And so what's going on? I don't have the courage to say, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
It's inauthentic. It's
right. You're just
dragging it along.
Yeah.
And so, and then I finally was like, hey man, can't do it because I think I'm just busy, man. And my man was like, yeah, I hear that. And then a couple weeks later, he was like, let's get together for lunch. We got together, and he was like, look, I'm calling BS on why we couldn't continue to do it.
Right.
I think there's something else with that. You know what I mean? And so now we here. Right. And so the truth of the matter was now we got to explore it. What really was going on?
Yeah.
And so to me, that's a friend. That's not going to allow me to operate like that. This phrase is used often in like positive psychology and coaching. The way you do anything is the way you do everything. Right? Like,
I find that
I don't necessarily agree with it.
But like, yes.
But you hear it everywhere. And if I riff on that for a second, the idea is that I'm the same person everywhere.
Yeah.
And so when you interrupt that inauthenticity here, this is probably not the only place that I do that.
Yeah. Right.
And so you're extremely valuable. You're a gift to me when you can call out these inauthenticity. You're an absolute gift. And so, yes, that's what we've cultivated. And not everyone operates like that. And so when you if you're outside of that and then you try to speak into someone's life in that way, it can be viewed. If you're not ready for that, then you're viewed as a threat. If you're pushing me to do something and change something I'm not ready to change, or investigate something that I don't want to investigate yet, my biology, my neurology is going to be designed to keep me safe. It's going to say, go away. This is a threat. It's going to cause pain.
That's a tricky one. Our minds are designed to protect us, yet they can be the very thing that keep us from facing the truth, even when others are there trying to help us along the way. How do you know you're ready to interrupt inauthenticity? What's your take? Tag us at LifeWorthee on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook and share with us. Back to the show.
Right?
Right. And so you're actively embracing these moments of pain, which maybe not even be characterized as pain now, because you're not reacting in that way, I guess.
They're uncomfortable.
They're uncomfortable, but not painful. It's so it'd be painful if you are rejecting that discomfort.
I'll use my friend Adrian's line. He's like, so here's the thing. You can either choose to eat the crap sandwich, or you can say no thank you and send it back to the kitchen. And then they come back with a crap buffet or a crap plate full of food. And you can say no to that and send it back. And then they come out with 2 plates of crap. And then you can say no thanks to that. And then eventually they come out with a crap buffet. When you could have just ate the piece of, like, which one do you want to do?
Right.
And so for me, what I've come to learn, you say, what did I learn, is the temporary moment of uncomfortability that I have created in my head is not going to be as bad as I created it.
It never is.
And the other side of that is the level of sitting and waiting with it for I'd rather rip it off.
Right.
I'd rather let's just do this.
Let's just get it done.
Let's just do that. It's going to be uncomfortable. I know it is. Let's just do that. Because once I did it, it's done. It's over. Right. And so the ability to press into those. Now, do I do it immediately all the time? No. But there's an awareness of even when I'm not doing it.
Okay.
That's the biggest piece, is the lack of awareness. If you're unaware, then you can't make a decision.
It's true. And then what? You're stuck in this limbo.
Then you're stuck in this cycle.
If you did not seek to become aware, which I feel like you were kind of propelled in that direction, regardless. But if you didn't seek this out, how would things be different?
I'd probably be sleeping around, smoking a lot of weed, getting drunk, and partying at the bar, and just continuing to try to bury the pain in unhealthy ways.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
Like for you, you're like, that's
no
exactly
doubt.
What would happen.
Listen, when the way that God set up, even after that, for me to be able to be supported, it's the only way it could have. I tried, it couldn't work. I ended up moving in, when I moved out of the marriage home, I ended up moving in with a dear friend of mine now, Lynn Cowan. Lynn Cowan is like a 72-year-old white Anglican priest, right? And so when I moved into the house with him, his wife, Haley at the time, she was in a wheelchair, and he had to feed her. And so and they've been married, I don't know, 40-something years, right? Right. So here I am, like on the edge of divorce. We're in the middle of divorce. We're going through it. Right. And I'm watching this man care for his wife in the most gracious and gentle way. And I'm living up on the 3rd floor. My boys are coming there. I had a whole engagement with my pastors at the church. They were the ones that actually designed a plan that was like, you got to go to therapy, you got to go see a psychiatrist. They were like, bro, you got to.
These are the things you got to do.
Yes. And so I met with them over till I don't remember how long, but every week I was meeting with these group of people on various different things. I'm living there, I'm living here. If that didn't happen in connection with the therapy, like it wasn't just a therapy, like all this is happening. If that didn't happen, there's no doubt. If I went to go get my own place with no supervision at that time, shoot. I don't even know. I might have more kids. I don't know. Right. I'm serious. I wasn't well. I was not in a spot where I should be out moving around by myself without the support. Okay. I wasn't because I wasn't healed, and I would have tried to heal that in very unhealthy ways. And I would have tried to continue to heal that in the ways that I had become accustomed to from my youth. Right?
I see. Yeah.
I would have known anything different.
Right. Did you have an awareness at this point, and even maybe before this point, of who you wanted to be versus where you were, or was there a disconnect
between
Like,
well, here's the thing. Here's like, so at the time, like on the surface, on the outside, it looked like I was crushing it.
Okay.
You know, married, own a home. We were 24 when we bought our house. 24, 25, something like that.
Yeah.
Right. So we bought a house. We've got now 26, 27. We got 2 kids, 2 cars, 2 jobs. I was involved in the community. It was like, yo, on the out, it was like, bro, this guy's crushing it, right? And so there was, you know where that came from?
What?
It came from being able to go back and forth between these 2 places when I was a kid.
There it is. It always goes back.
I know.
You knew
who do I need to be? Who do I need to be in this space versus that space, right? And so the level of inauthenticity that Charisse was seeing was just like, yo, this dude.
Right.
What is this? What the heck is this?
What the hell's going on?
Come on now.
Right.
Bruh. And so you can't go out here like you're this unfallible individual when at home, this is what I'm seeing. And part of the hard part for me in that too was like, okay, bet. But you see me at this worst, but you still choose to stay with me. Please do that. And so when you said no, it felt like a real rejection.
Right.
Because what I was showing on the outside wasn't really where I was at. It's what I thought people needed to see.
Yes. So that was the mask.
Yes.
Versus
I need help.
Versus you need help.
Yes.
And then you thinking, I don't know if you were even thinking this, but you thinking, I need help so I can be this wrong.
No.
Not at all.
No. I didn't think I needed help.
Right. You were like, it's working.
It's working.
It's working. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't need any help.
Okay.
What do I right? Like there were moments like I knew that this can't stay this way. And there were opportunities where I tried to change it. But I was a coward. Frankly, it's what it is.
Well, you said earlier there was this piece of the unknown that you just didn't want. I was a coward.
I'm not going down there.
Right.
I'm not dealing with that. And there's a great book by his name is Terrence Real. It's called I Don't Want to Talk About It: Unmasking the Secret Life of Male Depression. And there's a line in there. It's a really tremendous book. I recommend all dudes read it. It's fascinating. But anyway, there's a piece in there that really resonated with me. I think it was in that book, where he says, a lot of people think women are fragile. But what he's come to find in his practice is that men are brittle.
That's deep.
Yeah. And so brittle meaning like this will break apart in such a way that we can't put it back together.
That's exactly what I envisioned. Like the tiniest pieces just.
Yeah. And so the fear is because it's so unknown, if I go down into this place, I'm not going to because I
can't recover.
Right. Because we, broadly speaking, don't allow ourselves to fully experience the full spectrum of emotion. And so where socially we have allowed for that to happen for a lot more of our females, they experience, they've been sad, they've cried, they've gone through this, and they recognize this is a temporary thing, and then on this, I'll be fine over here.
Yeah.
Dudes don't do it. And so the risk of going in there is like, I don't know if I'll come out.
That's interesting. Specifically because I understand as a woman, yeah, I get it. I'll move through it. And I don't think I could ever imagine, except for maybe when I was a child, like, oh no, if this happens, it's devastating and it'll never...
I'm going to be stuck in there.
I'm going to be stuck.
I'm going to be stuck in this sadness. I'm going to be stuck. It's so scary. It's so dark and I haven't been dealt with. Like if I go in there, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
So those were a lot of the things, and that's where I say like providentially it was like, but you got to go in there. Yeah,
you got to do it. The only way to get through is to move through it.
Right.
So through all these experiences, right? So it sounds like you've had like done a lot of work. You
still ongoing.
I mean, it's never gonna stop, right? And you talk about authenticity. You talk about awareness. Through all these lessons, now where you're at, what makes life worth living based off of what you've experienced, and taking those lessons, and like, how do you move in your day to day?
What makes life worth living for me after all this? I think the ability to do this work, like this is living to me. Constantly exploring and reinventing and being like, how am I showing up? Like that this level of awareness.
Yeah.
That is living. I think it was Socrates who said the unexamined life is not worth living. And so ages ago, right?
Yeah.
But it's so true. And so the ability to continue to look at and reinvent and reevaluate and recalibrate to me is what makes it worth living. I can go again. I can show back up. There's no fail. Like, I screwed it up. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go again. Like, that's not the end.
Right.
Right. Like, and so being able to do that opens up the opportunity to step into those conversations that are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because I may not do this right, but if I don't, I can go again.
Right.
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 So modeling that and being able to invest that way of being in the world for other people to experience, to me, is fun.
That's awesome that you have that viewpoint. I feel like that response was so powerful in the sense that you can reinvent yourself and you can keep going. And it's like the complete opposite end of what you were just talking about, of I may never come out versus I can continue to move forward regardless of how this turns out.
So The Dark Knight Rises. Ever see that movie?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all in that story too.
Mm-hmm.
When he's down in that ditch and he can't get out.
Yeah.
Right? And then he finally gets out. And he goes and he beats Bane and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's a metaphor. You said it. Once you've gone down in there and then you've climbed back out, it's like, oh,
I did it.
I could probably do this again.
Mm-hmm.
And again.
Maybe even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? So that ability, what I find fascinating for me as I continue to try to get better at that, like when I'm doing it well, it's going well. Probably, I don't know, 50% of the time, if that, right? Like other times I'm BSing, like I got it together. But the opportunity to engage those conversations, and I just think about where my sons will be, at this point, they're 11 and 10, but where will they be when they're 24? Like a whole, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the opportunities that are there for them to explore. The idea that two of them, actually, they've already been in therapy. Yeah. Through it was like, yeah, we should do it. Mm-hmm. And so them coming through there, working on that with them. We have these cool little, I don't have them here at home, my wife's looking around. They're called Little Talk from the Best Self Co. Mm-hmm. And we pull those out at dinner, and they're like questions, like one is like, when's the last time you cried and why, right? Mm-hmm. And we talk about that. Some are what makes you happy, like, all these things, like, and so let's talk about it. Right. You know what I mean? Because you'll go down there, but I promise you, you'll be all right.
You'll be okay.
And I think that's what's a big thing that's missing in our American or Western. We don't have any rites of passages for boys. They don't exist. In indigenous cultures, a lot of those people were said these people were crazy. It was torturous, right? Like, what do you mean you would dip your hand in honey and then have to put it in a
beehive.
A beehive or
Yeah.
something, right? Or an
Yeah.
ant's nest and get stung up, right? Like, that's child abuse to do to an 11-year-old, 12-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
But that's misunderstanding the spiritual nature of a rite of passage.
Right.
Right? The rite of passage is to bring you to a liminal space, a threshold between life and death,
Mm-hmm.
for you to experience it, a microcosm of what life is, because life is going to be this hard, son.
Yeah.
But I promise you, as hard as it gets, you'll still be able to come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gives you a level of respect.
Yeah.
For that.
For life itself.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And how difficult it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then you have your elders there who've already been through it.
Right.
Right.
And
so
that's
they
the
walk you
support
through.
system.
That's the support system that we have there.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really do that well within the structures of our culture.
Yeah. Well, I think in Western culture, it's very individualized.
Precisely.
And that can be very isolating. And there's this push to, well, you just gotta pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it happen, which makes asking for help that much more unattainable or inaccessible. So I think what you're saying is,
but everyone's dying for it.
Everybody wants it. Everybody's looking for it in some way.
I need help.
Even if they're not saying it directly.
Right.
Even if they're not saying it directly.
Right.
So, that was so good. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Any last words for folks? Any words of advice or anything that you want folks to think about or question?
Don't eat processed food and ultra processed food.
Yeah,
it's a setup to get you addicted and then get you onto some drugs that you can't get off of, and you become a product for those industries. So stay away from that. They're going to proliferate it in your areas. Be aware. Stay away from Doritos, especially the nacho cheese. They're very, very bad for you.
Dang, they taste so good though.
They do that on purpose.
I know.
Yeah. So stay away from that stuff. It's not good for you. Those are my final words.
All right. Well, you guys, you take that with you and hopefully make some good decisions about
make wise decisions on your food
consumption.
And if you find yourself having a hard time staying away from them, it's probably because you're addicted. Yeah. I was there.
I think I'm still there.
It's hard, man.
It is. Doritos?
Yeah. My kids hate that I've made that decision to be more whole food based. Yeah, they're very mad.
Yeah, that's hard. That's hard. Kids don't get it. They're like, but it's so delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah. They'll appreciate it later.
No, man, just I would say make wise decisions. Challenge your boundaries in healthy ways. Be willing to get yourself some friends that can speak into your life and tell you the hard stuff that you might not want to hear, because it's an absolute gift if you can receive it without offense.
Cool.
Yeah.
And where can folks find you if they are looking?
Nowhere. You can't find me. I'm not looking to be found.
That's absolutely not true.
I don't know. I'm around on I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn. There's our organization's website is legendlegacy.org. IG is at RonWad828. I think Facebook's just Ronald B. Waddell Jr. I have a TikTok, but I don't use it. I'm old. And I got off of X. I'm not on X. Formerly known as Twitter.
Oh yeah, honestly, I forget about what X is because he renamed it. So, it is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm selling houses. And if you are in the need of selling or buying houses, I'm helping with that too.
Real estate agent.
Yeah.
He's ready for y'all.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Ron, for such an engaging conversation and your words of wisdom and your story that was so compelling. I very much appreciate it. But until next time, y'all, that is LifeWorthee, the podcast. I'll see you next time.
What a great podcast episode. Honestly, one of the realest conversations I've had in a while. Ron's story unfolded at the height of his divorce, living a fraudulent life, able to show up in ways others needed so that they could be comfortable. But in his personal life, he was not living up to the standard he portrayed to the external world, to simply avoid facing pain, insecurities, and accountability. A comfortable place for the mask while simultaneously being a destructive place for the heart. While the magic of inauthentic being allowed him to flourish, as it does for many of us in the many roles we serve in life, Life itself had pushed him toward a space of honesty and vulnerability that changed the trajectory of his journey forever. The true lesson came down to taking ownership in his outcomes, granting him power over his life choices. And so he flourishes as a father, as an executive, and as a person with the ability to remain authentic in his inauthenticity. I am confident that Ron will continue to push himself and others to be themselves and to do the work to create the outcomes they desire. If you want to hear more from Ron, you can connect with him on LinkedIn, on social media platforms, and through Legendary Legacies or through real estate, as he is a real estate agent and can help you with your real estate needs. Until next time, that was another episode of LifeWorthee, the podcast.